Hello, Social Media Club. All right, so today we are going to talk about leveraging democracy. And for those of you that I'm sure have seen the things leading into this, leveraging democracy is in reference to Reddit primarily, which is a democratic social platform that is immensely powerful and ridiculously fun. So before we get in, let's cover some urgent basics. You're in the right place if you want an evergreen strategy for increasing traffic and conversions. A lot of people are very frustrated by algorithms getting hit and going back to the drawing board and having to recreate a new strategy. And we're going to talk about how to kind of circumvent that process and just not be frustrated as much. If you're tired of chasing trends and fighting for reach, it really doesn't matter if you have any experience with Reddit or other democratic platforms. What you will learn today is going to amplify everything that you do, both digitally and offline. And that's something that I really love, is that Reddit is very challenging, but once you learn it, it just kind of goes in waves everywhere else with all of your social. And honestly, you actually learn some fun things for things like dating. But a little bit of an interesting introduction about me is I built my ex-fiance's dog a YouTube channel with 6,500 subscribers and 2 million views, which actually I think that's now to 3. I broke a server launching my blog with 450,000 page views for 72 hours. No money spent on ads. I made a girl world famous on Tinder, or girl from Tinder, world famous with 25 million impressions, also no ad spend. Created the most absurd email to give out in a bar, which for the record, you can email me at Brian with an I at yourplacetonight.com. 11,000 page views in the first 30 minutes and achieved consistent ROI of over 2,000% selling info products on Facebook. Thing is, it was entirely with the same formula. And the formula is really simple. Never expect your audience's standards to be lower than your own. I wouldn't share this, basically, if you wouldn't share it enthusiastically, then how can you expect someone else to do it? The higher your standards are and the higher you hold yourself to them, the more likely it is that you're going to create great content and have people just jump to share it without you ever asking or paying them to do so. So normally I wouldn't recommend something as narcissistic as self-quoting, but it's kind of on my bucket list to be more quotable. So that and the speech bubble looked cool, so feel free to tweet this. Also, you will be getting this presentation at the end of this presentation, and if you see some blueness, those are all links that are clickable, so feel free to take notes, or you can click all the links after the fact and dig in. A little bit about me. I am a social engineer, and I founded Ghost Influence. I'm the host of the Ghost Influence podcast, and I'm the chief marketing officer of PrimeMind. PrimeMind is exploratory journalism designed to foster critical thinking. It's a bit like The Atlantic for millennials and has really interesting content that I love. Ghost Influence is all about finding ways to share things authentically and get people to do so authentically. It's not about forcing a message and convincing someone to do something. It's about matching content to an existing audience. And in this case, we're going to talk about Reddit because there are thousands of existing audiences, and you just have to understand what they want and see if you are the person or the company that is able to provide that for them. So I have been featured in a lot of ridiculous places, but my favorite is Al Jazeera, just because to say that I got featured by Al Jazeera is really fun. So here's what you're going to learn. How to leverage the power of democratic platforms, what it looks like to measure the analytics of success in that regard, clearly define steps to getting started, but wait, there's more. So basically, I mean, a lot of people just have said perpetually, like, I tried using Reddit, but, right? I didn't understand the design of the platform is always the first thing. I got hammered with negative comments or was completely lost with how it worked. Those are kinds of the things that we're going to address, right? Reddit is very formulaic once you see it, but it takes a while to see it. It's the equivalent of Pig Latin, where Facebook might be English and Twitter might be Spanish. So there is a language, there is a structure, and that's what we are going to talk about. Now, make sure to stick to the end, because I will give you a link to download this presentation, a baller checklist for getting started, and a GIF of a puppy, because why not? If you get stressed because I'm going too fast, don't worry, because this will be recorded or is already recorded, and you'll have a link to the presentation with some notes at the end. All right, so let's start with a cool story. So my roommate spent about 2 weeks messing with my head, and I swore vengeance. A few months later, I saw an opportunity. I was learning Facebook ads at the time, and decided, wow, I'm getting all these amazing results with custom audiences. What would happen if I took that to the extreme? Like, I love Mythbusters, and if something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So the question became, how can I overdo this? And in this case, it wasn't a bigger custom audience, it was a smaller one. So I targeted my roommate, who also happened to be a sword swallower, with a Facebook advertising campaign that only appeared for him. And this was the first thing that he saw. Trouble swallowing pills? And does it seem ironic that swallowing swords is easy and then swallowing small pills makes you gag? And he basically just freaked out. I tortured him for about 3 weeks to the point where he got so paranoid that he stopped talking to his girlfriend over the phone. I didn't do it to talk about it. I did it because I thought it was funny, and that sounds kind of sadistic to say it, but it's the truth. It took me about 6 months to realize that the story was worth documenting. And in that 6 months, I had been to conferences, I had talked to friends and colleagues. Nobody had read the story. I just told the story in bars, and people go, what do you do? And I was like, well, I do ridiculous marketing. What do you mean by ridiculous marketing? I was like, well, this is what I do for fun. And everybody thought the story was amazing, but by the time I realized that it was actually worthwhile, I probably told it verbally like 100 times. So when I wrote it, it was very easy for me to tell it. I had all this practice telling this in a very theatrical way. Then I wrote The Ultimate Retaliation, Pranking My Roommate with Targeted Facebook Ads. I launched my blog. It was a WordPress blog that was that had some web hosting, not to name names. And I launched it, and about 3 hours later, at a very strategic time, I submitted the first post to Art Marketing on Reddit. And as soon as I did that, I had 450,000 people hit my site in the first 3 days. Average time on site was 2 minutes, with 17,000 shares in the first 3 days. Featured by Adweek, Business Insider, Inbound, Hacker News, some e-cards, and a host of others that is too long to mention. 1.5 million visitors, 7 million earned media impressions, and 38,000 backlinks in the first 30 days. Covered by Search Engine Journal twice, Cracked, Observer, Al Jazeera. I got media contacts, requests to speak, and introductions to clients for now, at this point, over 2 years. It is perpetually my open door. Anywhere that I go, I can say, oh, I happen to be the guy that does this. And it's a little weird because it's 2 years old, but people still find it hilariously relevant. I got placed in Adweek being featured as a Reddit marketing expert. And really, at this point, the less I sell myself, the more people seek me out. I turn down work and focus on my own projects and pass referrals to colleagues, and that amplifies it even more. I did something because I thought it would be funny and experimental, and then I wrote a funny and ridiculous and profane story about it, and that's what made people interested. It wasn't because I said, I'm an expert, here's why I'm an expert, you should pay attention to me, I'm an expert. I said, hey, I do what I do for work for fun, like this. And then everybody was like, oh, wow, if he does this in his spare time and he's creative, then obviously he must be brilliant. And I never said that, but the fact that people think it is very flattering. So cool. The thing is that a lot of people thought this was a fluke, and I thought it was a fluke. But the more that I dug into it, the more I realized that there are a lot of these unicorn stories. I interviewed Blake Jameson on the Ghost Influence podcast, and he is the founder of Tinder Hacks. He had a drunken idea to edit all of his Tinder photos to make him look like the Tinder pick of the week. And he then matched with over 4,000 women, wrote a story about it. It went viral on Medium, and he called it the fulcrum to his career. He is now consistently sought out for a variety of projects, largely revolving around growth hacking. Richard Littauer had a little bit of the same story. Richard offered to review people's user experience while drunk and on video, and he got featured on Gizmodo, HubSpot, Fastco, Tech.co, and more by getting drunk and talking about people's websites. That led to a lot of contacts, serious contacts outside of user as drunk in both cases. So it kind of led in with this conversational, humorous thing, and then very, very serious, large budget projects came from the conversations. That it doesn't always apply to personal brands, or it doesn't only apply to personal brands. Shirtless Cash is a brand that it's a t-shirt company that makes t-shirts entirely out of content off of Reddit. He broke $40,000 in sales before his Shopify trial expired. That's 14 days. $40,000 in sales after launching in the first 14 days. Another great example is Squatty Potty. Squatty Potty generated 48 million views in 50 days and tripled their customer base, quite literally with a pooping unicorn. They showed a unicorn pooping with swirls and colors and glitter, and they drove 48 million views. They sold out all of their Christmas inventory 3 months before Christmas solely with this video. Now, I interview a lot of these people on the Ghost Influence podcast because I'm perpetually seeking to find them and interview them, because the more that I do, the more I see common threads between their stories. A lot of times it's the way that people are telling these stories. They're very enthusiastic about it. It's something that they would do when they're having drinks with friends or colleagues. It's not something that they do to impress or pitch. It starts as something that they are genuinely interested in. And that enthusiasm is one of the most important elements. So instead of telling the world who you are, show them. Projects, and I have air quotes around projects like this enable people to see the personality behind the brand. It acts as a catalyst for interest in relationships. When you do a project like this, it expresses your personality. That's not to say that you need to edit your Tinder profile or get really drunk or screw with your friend. That was my personality, Blake's personality, and Richard's personality. You need to identify the personality of the leadership of the company and the personality of the company as a whole, because that is a personality that needs to be conveyed. If you do not know what your brand archetype is, take some time, look it up, and figure it out. That will help to guide you in doing this. But when you come up with these ridiculous ideas, or these ideas are like, oh man, I wish I had the time to do that, those are often the best ones that you should do. If you think you should, then if you feel like you should and you don't have time, like investigate it and see, do you? It can provide a massive benefit. So algorithms are designed to predict people, yet most marketers focus on the math instead of the humans, right? You see SEO, as much as I'm probably going to get shunned for saying this, I think that SEO is the thing that you do when your content sucks. And if your content didn't suck, then you wouldn't have to put so much effort into SEO. SEO is essentially trying to fulfill the requests or the interests of an algorithm which is a mathematical formula to determine what humans think is interesting. If you make what humans think is interesting, the algorithm will then say that it's interesting. If you try and make what the algorithm thinks is interesting, then the humans are going to realize that that's not what they're looking for. The algorithm's going to change and you're going to have to start from scratch. People don't change. Environments do. Algorithms change, environments change, platforms change. People do not change. Focus on people. Remember, you're talking to people, other humans with hearts that beat like yours. Talk to them. Don't talk to the math and the system and the loopholes and the glitches. Speak to the people. The clients that I've worked with 5 years ago are still using the same strategies because they focus on the people. Algorithm updates only serve to better predict what people want. The people's interests don't change. People say, oh, I really want to click this because, what happens next? You won't believe. Well, they click it and then they realize that isn't actually what they wanted. And then the algorithm sees like, oh, people don't like clickbait. So then they change everything and now clickbait doesn't work anymore. What people were interested in hasn't changed. How it was presented to them did. Focus on what people want. So digital empathy is what I talk about a lot. Digital empathy is social leverage. It's where you don't tell people that you understand them, you show them. People want to feel understood, not be told. Audiences should never outgrow their relevance. This is very important. If you're doing Facebook marketing or any kind of paid targeting, bigger is not better and smaller is not better. Relevance is better. You want to make sure that the vast majority, I always aim for 90%, the vast majority of the audience is going to respond identically. If you target men over 30 who have teenage daughters, you're not going to be able to say to all of them, oh man, having a teenage daughter is rough, because all of those men are going to have a different relationship with their daughters and with their spouses, and that's going to change how they feel about that statement. So you need to drill down an audience in a way so that what you are saying resonates with the vast majority of them in the same way. And that is going to be a very sliding scale and dependent on, it's going to be a sliding scale dependent on what you're doing, but just remember relevance. Relevance is key. All right, so you can treat every follower like they're your only follower. There's a fantastic TED Talk, which is linked here with Derek Sivers. It's a 3-minute how to start a movement. And I put this in for a very important reason, is that when you do a paid ad and someone comments on it, when you respond to their comment and start a discussion, Facebook's algorithm is seeing that you are interested, seeing that conversation is happening, that real people are talking. Person A comments, and then the brand comments. Then person B jumps in and gives their feedback. Person A responds to person B, person C, and the next thing you know, you have a full conversation with multiple people. Facebook's algorithm is not only going to give you more reach, it's going to give you cheaper ads. And that is not some hack. It's make good content and carry conversations, and you'll get extended reach. So you can start a movement by embracing your first followers as new leaders, right? Those first followers are the people who are commenting on your posts. Talk to them. So often brands are like, oh, okay, great, I got a comment. And then they just ignore it. No, you should have a conversation with people. Don't have a conversation the way where it's very forced of like, thank you so much for the comment. What do you think about XYZ? Because that would be very dry, but actually have a conversation with someone. Don't underestimate the power of depth and detail. This is huge. Avoid bland words like awesome and amazing because they're very low value. Get specific and talk to people and say, I love the eloquence with which you underscored the importance of, highlighting how someone communicates, right? Get specific as possible. Use adjectives, get a word a day calendar, whatever it takes. But the more specific that you can get, the more it shows people that you took the time. Accept compliments with gratitude and bestow credit abundantly. If someone gives you a compliment and say that they love it, accept the compliment and thank them for it, but at the same time, bestow as much credit as you can on the time that they took to read it, or on the authors and the partners that helped you to create the content, or whatever it may be. Push away the credit as much as possible and be humble and highlight other people's contributions. You will start attracting to people to you and your brand magnetically. Now, people first principles. This is something that I love to highlight because it seems so simple, and which is why I think a lot of people don't do it, but it's immensely powerful. Become a member of your audience. Before you jump in and start targeting content or offers at an audience, become a member of that audience. Talk to those people. Put yourself in their mind, and do casual interviews are honestly one of my favorite ways to do this. So if I have an avatar, I will find that person. If it is a flight attendant between the age of 20 and 26 who is infrequently single, and just, doing a few years as a flight attendant so that she can travel the world and live a free lifestyle. And I'm trying to sell her a service that helps her make extra money on the side. This actually happened. This was the avatar of a client that I was working with, and that perfectly described a very cute flight attendant that lived in my apartment complex. So I offered to go over to her house and bring a bottle of wine, and we shared a bottle of wine and talked about life. From that conversation, I was able to very effectively target and also realized that it was the wrong avatar for that particular client. So for the price of a bottle of wine and a conversation with a cute girl, I saved hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on targeting solely because I got drunk with my avatar. Highly recommend that strategy. It's also very fun. Speak to a whole and avoid irrelevance. Look for ways to close data gaps where messages become irrelevant. This is back to relevance of your audience, but it's also relevance of your message. You want to speak specifically, and you can also use language that tells people, hey, look, this isn't for you. You don't have to say that, but say like, if you're riding a motorcycle is hard, right? So anyone who thinks that riding a motorcycle is easy is not going to pay attention to that. So you can do that strategically. Riding a motorcycle is fun. Frame and present, don't pitch and sell. The cure for cancer is being ignored because it's being pushed, right? Present what you have in a way that those listening will accept the idea. You have to focus on their experience. It doesn't matter what you have. It matters how you present it to the people who are listening, because they have to accept the idea. Reward participation with your energy. As you'll notice, I am a very excitable person. This is how I normally talk, which can get really intense. But when you comment back on someone, when you're in any context, when you respond with a comment or an email, a phone call, whatever, and you're like, thank you so much for commenting. I really appreciate it. It's very boring. It's very dry. Someone took the time to put in their energy into writing a comment and responding to what you have to offer. And if you respond with a very dry and boring kind of response, then they're going to feel deflated. Now, you can use this strategically. If someone says, this is so great, exclamation point, right? It's great and it's enthusiastic, but it's a little low energy. So you say, thank you so much, glad you enjoyed it, right? So you respond a little bit beyond what they give to you. If someone writes a paragraph about how what you wrote quantified what they've been pondering for the last 2 years and it completely changed their perspectives on dating and relationships, you need to take the time to respond to them. Thank you so much. I too had hesitation around this and that, right? Share your own personal experience and give back to them. Give them that energy, and they're going to feel gratified, and they're going to want to dig into your content and talk about your brand more often. Avoid broad language and communication. This is back to those awesome and amazing words. Practice expressing what you feel as much as what you think. This can be, and I do this in lines for coffee a lot of times. I will find opportunities to compliment people in the most specific ways possible, because it makes it easier when you go to do it in a comment or a conversation, and that is what keeps people hooked. Give credit everywhere possible. Make people feel valued, and they will bring more value. This is back to dog training. If you know anything about dog training and positive reinforcement training, ignore the negative behavior and compliment the positive with overwhelming enthusiasm. So if you tell the dog to sit and the dog sits, you go, oh my God, good job, yes. And they're going to want to sit again. They're not going to want to treat because they're so excited about that enthusiasm. The same goes when someone subscribes or buys a product or joins your community or shares with a friend or whatever is deemed a positive behavior in your business. You want to go at that with overwhelming enthusiasm, because then they're going to do it again, and they're going to look for other opportunities to do it again. Now, if you are looking to master communication, I highly recommend checking these books out. They're fantastic, and this is probably, depending on how fast of reader you are, it's a hefty reading list, but these are all great for a variety of communication reasons. Now, democracy is made of people. You can't leverage one without understanding the other. Reddit is a democracy, so we need to understand the people within Reddit in order to leverage it. This is where we talk about converting digital empathy into social leverage. The word democracy literally means rule by the people. In a true democracy, the people govern. In a republic, the people elect representatives to make and enforce laws. All democracies are really just republics. It's a question of how much. Now, Reddit is governed by moderators. Each community has a series of moderators, and the moderators originally started many of the communities, brought in other moderators, right? Kind of like semi-elected officials, and then you have the admins, which run the platform. So there are, so to speak, elected rulers that you do have to work within. Now, there are brand platforms where users select channels, and there are democratic platforms where users join communities. If a channel, be it a friend, a brand, a community, anything ceases to be interesting, it's switched off. If non-relevant content is submitted to a community, it's seen as an invasion of personal space and shot down. The tighter the knit of the community, the easier it is to spot an outsider. Now, some examples. Brand platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Vine, right? People choose to follow brands and personalities. If they cease to be uninteresting, then they get rid of them. Democratic platforms like Reddit, Imgur Vote, Hacker News, so on and so forth, those are democratic, so you join a community and anyone can submit to that community, and then people vote up or down based on how interesting they think something is. Now, interesting is a bad word because it's really relevant. Relevant is the key. Now, on Reddit, you have broad communities like pics and aw. Aw is a great example because it's anything that makes you go, aw, right? Anything that's adorable. But aw is notoriously uninterested in babies. They want puppies, they want kittens, they want ducks, they want rabbits. But if you look at the stats, they're notoriously uninterested in babies. Now, there are other communities like interesting as fuck, which is just anything that is exactly that. Interesting as fuck. I don't know if I can curse in this, but I just did. Bleep me out if I'm not allowed to. So there's all these different communities in Reddit. Some are more specific than others, so it's very clear what those people want to see. And others are a little bit broader, so you have to suss out the language of that community so that you can figure out what is going to be relevant. Now, some Teddy Roosevelt, a vote is like a rifle. Its usefulness depends on the character of the user. Now, that is weirdly relevant and true with Reddit because a lot of times people will vote based on how they feel about the content and not what the content is. So it's kind of about their personal bias. Now, this is not good or bad. It is just worth noting. So, notables. Content is tied to a community, not an individual. This affords the message to be larger than the individual. And this is important. If you are on a brand platform and you post a message, that message can only be as big as the brand. If the brand is a person, it can only ever be as big as one person. But if it's brought into a community and made a part of the community, then this can grow and grow and grow. And this is why Reddit and communities like Reddit are often the biggest sources of viral, because the best messages are not attached to any one person or brand. They get carried because the idea is communicated through a community. Now, people's responses are binary. It's either acceptance or rejection. So it's a bit like a strikeout or home run and nothing in between. Now, when you're crafting messages, and this is in the checklist that you will be linked at the end, when you're crafting messages, you want to make sure that you clearly communicate in a depending on the sub, in a very concise way, exactly what you have so that someone can instantly decide whether they're happy or sad, whether they love it or they hate it. you want to give them that instant binary response so that they know how to react. Every outcome offers communication intelligence. Circular feedback loops amplify future success. That is an unnecessarily convoluted way of saying every time you submit something to Reddit, every time you comment, whether it does good or it does bad, you learn. And it's key to look back at all of your posts. I regularly, when I'm training people, I will have them go through and comment on things and then go back a few days later and see how those comments performed so that they can see which of their comments were relevant to that conversation, relevant to that community, and relevant to the platform as a whole. And oftentimes, if you post something, and I'll do this maybe 10 times a day, I'll post a comment, I'll check back. One of my comments will get 100 points, and another comment will get -5, right? So you learn what fits, and the more you do it, the better you get. There aren't influencers within a democratic platform, but there are elements of trust that bestow certain freedoms. Now, unlike a republic, officials aren't elected. Moderators are essentially peacekeepers. They want to make sure that nobody's trying to kill anyone else, threatening, and they want to make sure that the content is relevant to the community and abiding by all the rules. Elements of trust are based largely on someone's commitment to the community. In Reddit specifically, you can see how long people have been a member of Reddit. You can see how much they're submitting to which subreddits and what they're submitting, what domains they're submitting to. You can see how their posts are doing. You can see how many points they have, karma points, which basically tell you, how committed they are to the community. There's a lot of different things that you can see, but the majority of it is that you can see how much someone commits to a community. And if you want to submit constantly, you need to mix your submissions with valuable content. Actually, all of your content needs to be valuable, but if you're submitting your own content, you need to provide equivalent and exponentially larger value with other people's content. My ratio is typically a 10 to 1. So for every one piece of content that I have a vested interest in, I try and post 10 other pieces of content that are just cool things that I found and just have no interest, I have no connection to. The removal of the individual develops this further. So if you stop using I or my language, unless it is relevant to the story, like my friend did this, the more that you can really just kind of take yourself out of it and give everything that you have, give the idea all to the community so that everybody else can adopt it as their own. The more that you remove the individual, the more that you're able to give to the community. Getting people to hear your story on social media and then act on it requires using a platform's native language, paying attention to context, understanding the nuances and subtle differences that make each platform unique, and adapting your content to match, right? Gary Vaynerchuk, jab, 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 right hook. It's a great kind of introductory voice. Reddit is not Facebook. Reddit is not Twitter. Reddit is not Instagram. Reddit is very, 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 very different. It takes some time to learn because it is so different, but it is worthwhile. Just do not act on Facebook, or do not act on Reddit as you would on Facebook, and here is why. On average, Facebook users consume 660 page views per month. On average, Reddit users consume 1,300 pages per month. Now, 80% of Facebook page views are tied to an individual. Here's my dog, here's my lunch, here's my mom, I'm getting married, whatever, right? So only 20% of them are found content, articles, videos that's, of something interesting, whatever it may be. Reddit's 5 million users pales in comparison to Facebook's 1.55 billion users, but that doesn't change the fact that they consume 10 times more content. So if you take out the 80% of content that is not related to their friends and you only focus on the articles, it's 10 times more. Now, what this means is that people hunt for what's best and they compete to be the first to submit it to Reddit. They're programmed to be of value to the communities that they've joined. And this ties back to the importance of you being a community member, because on Reddit, people consume so much information so quickly that over time, they develop extremely high standards. Now, with high standards means that they're going to shoot down anything that's not up to par, which means that if you submit something that's kind of like a low value, here's 5 things you need to know about bananas, you're going to get shot down very quickly. Now, if you have a proprietary study that you found about the neuroscience of bananas and how that helps to increase conversions in your e-commerce business, that's a different story. So you want to focus all of your energy on the stuff that's the most relevant to your audience. And if that means spending 15 hours, and I accidentally hit my spacebar, if that means, like with my Facebook prank, I spent 15 hours writing an article, and then I probably spent, I spent about 15 hours writing it, and then I probably spent about 5 hours doing the actual prank itself, and then $2, which was awesome. So about 20 hours to produce one piece of content, which if you ask any content marketer is ridiculous, but that was all I needed. Focus all of your energy on the stuff that you know will work. And the way that you find out what will work is by participating in the community and learning who they are, learning the language, and then figuring out how you can support, entertain, or inform those people. Standards are high. I can't stress this enough. Reddit is fantastic because the standards are high. If you win there, you win everywhere. With my Facebook prank and with pretty much everybody else that I've talked to on the Ghost Influence podcast, when you win on Reddit, it goes everywhere else. Adweek, Business Insider, Huffington Post, Mashable, all of these different publications, and most publications pull ideas and stories in some regards from Reddit. If you win on Reddit, it carries across the web. There's a reason why they call it the front page of the internet. It is challenging to hit the front page, beyond challenging, but if you do, it will pay off for years following. So contribution to the discussion is raised for the same concerns. You need to contribute something that's meaningful. It's not uncommon for people on Reddit to write novels as responses. It's great for product feedback, user feedback, and audience research because people give you so much information about how you can be better. The common mistake that I've seen a lot of slightly more egotistical clients make is that they combat against this and they fight and they say, you're wrong. My product is great because this is the wrong thing to do. You want to listen and say, oh, thank you so much for, be honest and say, oh, really interesting. What would you like to see? Ask them questions. If someone gives you feedback, take it. Notables, democratic platforms are the ultimate proving ground. If you win within a democracy, you win everywhere else. They're the epicenter of content coverage and syndication. Communities often are the validation for content publishers. Publishers source democratic platforms, and when content is interlaced with a brand, you win big. Now, this is a big one. I always kind of point out Under Armour because it's a great example. A mother once sent a letter to Under Armour saying that her, I believe, 6-year-old son was attacked by a pit bull. All of his clothing was torn to shreds except for his Under Armour shirt. And it made him feel like a superhero because it was his superhero shirt. So every time he was going to physical therapy, he wore that shirt. She sent Under Armour this letter. Under Armour sent back a letter directly to the kid along with a box of pretty much everything that they make. Now, if you were a publication and you were going to talk about this amazing story, there is no way that you can tell that story without saying Under Armour, and multiple times at that. So when you write a story, ask that question. How is this going to be covered? If you can wrap your brand into something like that, my Facebook prank got, air quotes, covered by cracked.com. They basically stole the whole thing. They took all of the screenshots that were within the post, they put them into the article, and they credited Facebook. So it was a Facebook conversation between me and my friend. Obviously, we were both typing on Facebook's platform, and they credited the screenshots of that conversation to Facebook, which makes zero sense whatsoever. They basically just violated the copyright in a really weird way, but because of the way that it was written, they said my last name 12 times. It's impossible to tell that story without talking about me, because if you tried to, people would say, well, who the hell did this? I need to know, and it would feel like the story is incomplete. Create content that is tied to your brand. Master opportunity, this is a great thing, and you can check these out later. Mention, Google Alerts, TextWalker Alerts, Google search operators are all ways that you can find out any mention of specific topics or your brand and jump on those opportunities. Let's talk about my favorite formula. The Frankenstein formula is kind of what I do to figure out what is best in any context. It's pretty simple. So select a community. Now this could be a subreddit. This could be a group on Facebook. It really could be anything. Select a community. Identify their language. How do they talk? Is it short? Is it long? Is it emotional? Is it analytical? Is it personal? Is it discovery-based? Is it exploratory? Is it static? How were they phrasing their language, and what are they saying? Establish a framework for that language. So if their language is, for example, and actually I'll show you in a minute, so I'm going to skip over that. Establish a framework and leverage your understanding. Now, you can use this to avoid pitfalls and aim for triumphs. So you look for all the things that people do poorly and you avoid those. And you look for all the things that people do well and you aim for those. And you use that knowledge to basically have a massive advantage over your competition, because you can distill all of the most successful things, find the common elements, and build what you're making out of those common elements that you know to define success. So if you look at a snapshot of the top post from Our Gadgets, you will see Canon just unveiled a 250 megapixel sensor that can read lettering on a plane flying 11 miles away. that tells you exactly what you need to know. That is analytically, logically, everything about the content at hand. Same thing all these down. Somebody just won $1 million bounty for hacking the iPhone. I don't need to read any of these posts because I completely understand what it's about. Now, to understand how it happened, then I would read the post. But this is analytically exactly what the content is. Now, if you go to the top shots of our Tinder, you'll say, I matched with my professor on Tinder right after a final. This is what he messaged me. She unmatched me pretty quick. Good luck. A Tinder conversation with what I thought was a hot girl. Kind of proud of this one, right? So these are all lead-ins. Now, a lot of times with Tinder, and I've just noticed this because I love the community, it's hysterical. A lot of times the title of the submission will be the punchline of the person's profile. So basically you're reading punchline first, and then you're reading the joke, and then the punchline makes sense. Looking for those kinds of structures to see how a community communicates is going to enable you to make a more effective submission with anything, Reddit, Facebook, or otherwise. So the analytics of success are interesting. When you have a very successful post on Reddit, particularly a front page post, which if you can do a front page post once a year, your business will be fantastic. Initial waves of traffic is what's going to happen. So with my Facebook post, the initial waves of traffic crashed my server 3 times. Be wary of this. If you are doing self-hosting and you're playing around with Reddit a lot, make sure that you invest in a good server. Feel free to shoot me an email and I will tell you how I built what I say is the Reddit-proof server. Basically, I got hit with, I think it was 10 concurrent requests per second when my blog went up to Reddit, and that was about 5,000 people live on the site, and that crashed 3 times and cost me a lot of money to get it back up, and also a lot of lost opportunity. So make sure that you're ready. Second is earned media impressions. This is where publications start to pick up the story and talk about it. Now you can see this a little bit. If it's not happening, you can have people submit what's happening on Reddit to publications, say, hey, this is blowing up on Reddit. I think that you should talk about it. Not always necessary, but it does help in certain instances. It's a little bit more challenging with something relating to a more niche blog, but if it's kind of a big story, you can nudge it along in passive ways, and passive being key. Circular leverage. This is usually 30 days and beyond, where you get to say, hey, I had something that blew up on Reddit. It got featured here, here, and here, and you should talk to me about these things, right? So you use it as a form of credibility. So it starts with a massive bump in traffic, which you try and push as much as possible, talking to people, having conversations, sharing, giving new information to fill the gaps where people are asking questions, earned media impressions where people talk about that, giving as much information as you can to publishers, offering exclusive interviews, giving insights that weren't included in the original content, the how-to story, the behind the scenes, whatever you can, and then circular leverage where you talk about the process as a whole and explain from your perspective what happened. Notables, distill the essence of those you want to model, understand your market, and make targeted investments. This is great because instead of posting 25 things a day, like BuzzFeed does, you can post 1 thing a week and have far better success and be less frustrated. Fertilize the perspective beliefs of the community. Find what the community is, find what they believe, find out how they communicate, and figure out how you can present what you have to them. So a lot of times I will have a piece of content that I want to present to a community, and I'll do the research and I'll find out how they communicate and just say, doesn't fit them. I need to find somewhere else to put this. A lot of times I want to put something into Reddit and it's a fantastic piece, but literally a community just doesn't exist that's relevant. So don't submit it. Don't try and force a square peg into a round hole. If it doesn't fit, then just don't do it. But the opposite can also be done. Whereas once you understand the community, you can design something for that community. Rather than take something that exists and fit it in, you can say, I understand what this community is looking for, and I have access to this thing over here that would probably fit it. I should make that. So it's really good for fleshing out ideas. A lot of times I will take an idea, try and fit it into a community. If it fits, then I will design it for that community. If it doesn't fit, then I'll scrap the idea because I don't have an audience for that idea to hit once it's done. Use alert systems to be everywhere and bring value. This is just really fun for me, at least personally, and there's a lot of ways that you can use it. But when people mention me on Reddit, I get a text message on my phone within 3 minutes, and then I jump into the conversation. I often get the response of, holy shit, that was fast. And I'm like, yep, yeah, I have alert systems up just because I want to jump in. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Hey, what's up? And I answer questions. Create circular leverage and focus on supporting others. Once you do something successfully, you get to talk about how you did it successfully, and you can help others do the same. When you focus on this new kind of platform, you don't have to spend years building an audience and an email list and a Facebook page and Twitter account and having everybody get to know you so that you can be heard when you publish something interesting. On Reddit, there's over 9,000 active communities. These are all communities that are active with people who have interests and perspectives and beliefs, and they're very common. Within the community is a very consistent theme of what people are interested in. So if you have an idea and you can find a community that fits with that, you can suss out whether or not that idea will be of interest to the community once you make it. So before you ever start making a piece of content or a project or a website or whatever, before you ever even start making it, you'll know if this existing community is going to be interested. And if they are, and you make it for them, then you're going to start out with an existing customer base and people are going to jump all over it. So you're essentially able to invest less and get more. And it's a really great way of validating ideas. I cannot stress that enough. So taking your first steps. If you'd like to learn a language, what do? You immerse yourself. So join, observe, read, converse, and then begin to speak. Do not join and immediately start submitting your own content. This is a great way to get banned because you don't know what you're doing. Join, observe, listen, learn, look for commonalities. Try and understand. If someone makes a comment that you don't understand, research it. If you don't get a reference, look for it. Read, talk to people, ask questions, ask for help. Say, I'm new to this. If you need to, like jump in passively. You wouldn't want to, go to France and try and fake that you know French when you only know 2 words, because that would just be idiotic and people look at you like you're crazy. That is essentially what will happen if you jump into Reddit and act like you know how to speak Reddit right off the bat. Join, observe, read, converse, and then begin to speak. I cannot stress that order enough. What I do recommend also is 30 minutes a day for a month. It's a really, really fast way to jump in quickly. Join communities that are relevant to you. Different communities are relevant to you in different ways. If you're a marketer, join our marketing, our business, and our entrepreneur. But you probably also like dogs and mountain biking and rock climbing and whatever, so join those communities too. If you're only commenting and submitting on business stuff, marketing and business and entrepreneurship, it's a dead giveaway that you're only there for one purpose. And if you're only there for one purpose, Reddit is not going to serve you. It will probably do the opposite. So if you're not going to participate in the community in an organic, genuine way, which is by participating as you, and you, there are multiple facets of you. There's the rock climber version of you, the cycling version of you, the Spurs fan version of you, whatever. Not a Spurs fan, by the way, just an example. Then that's the organic and natural way to do it. Use the Frankenstein formula to evaluate and predict. Use the rising section to make bets on performance. Now, every subreddit and Reddit as a whole has a rising section, which is stuff that is up and coming. If you focus on commenting in these and trying to nail the best comment, you can often see if you're right. And it's basically kind of like fantasy football, where you're making a comment on a post that's about to do very well and prospectively hit the front page. And if you land that top comment spot, it's just really great practice. All right, so yes. All right, now, most importantly of all, not sure why you showed up today, but I really hope you'll get this one thing. There are no tricks to use here. Effective leverage of democratic social platforms requires contribution, which you can and should do strategically. Said differently, democracy can be leveraged through strategic contribution. And hey, that's a quote that you can talk about. So if you're asking, how do you apply all this? Download the presentation, ghostinfluence.com/leveraging-democracy. You can download the Reddit checklist, ghostinfluence.com/Reddit-checklist. And you can also email me at brian@ghostinfluence.com. You can hear the strategies that work for other people on the podcast. And remember that strategies should be a composite, not a copy, right? So you want to learn a bunch of different strategies, pull the pieces together and make your own. Composites, not copies. If you want to amplify the speed and certainty of your success, you can join the Ghost Influence community. It's $97 per month, $997 a year. I recommend that members commit 3 to 6 hours per week, and this includes time spent learning and executing. Really, it's just a guided platform of people who are all working to further their brand. We do talk about Reddit marketing quite a bit because I love it, but we also talk about Facebook and email outreach, and really just anything that you need to know. I don't like unanswered questions, so if members have a question, I find someone to answer it for them. And let me know how I can help. One of my favorite questions to ask, but let me know how I can help. And as promised, a GIF of a puppy. Whee! So this is actually the puppy that my ex-fiance's puppy that went viral on YouTube, and that's it. So yeah, I hope that you got something from today, and really want to stress how important it is to remember that platforms like Reddit are just people. There's less presentation because brands are not trying to present themselves. People are not trying to present themselves as they do on Facebook and Twitter. People are more authentic, and you really need to connect with them on an authentic level in order to leverage the platform.